morning. Are we okay?
Yes.
Are we all okay? Should we try that again? Are we all okay?
Yes.
See, I feel lonely up here when nobody's speaking to me. So you're all doing okay. What we're going to do today is a kind of follow-up from my demonstration that I did last year. Was anybody here last year? Did anybody watch me? Was I complete rubbish?
Yeah.
No? Was it good? Relatively entertaining? Well, for those of you that weren't here last year, what we tried to do was a kind of a basic introduction into spraying a model and sort of tips and ideas for creating weathering effects and that kind of thing. I think the problem with it was we didn't have a great deal of time, and there was no kind of end product. So what the guys have decided that we'll do this year is use this as an introductory kind of session. It'll only be perhaps an hour or so, and we'll use this as an introductory section. And then what's going to happen for the rest of today and possibly tomorrow morning is that this model here, and also one that I've brought, I'm going to paint in real time. So it will be as I would paint a model if I were building it for myself, either for a magazine feature or for a competition, something along those lines. So that people who perhaps are, you guys sitting out there who are perhaps a bit shy of putting your hand up and saying, how did you do that, can sit in front of me and actually watch it happen in real time. You can go away and have a coffee and then come back and you can see something else and be able to ask questions all day. And then hopefully by the end of today or by lunchtime tomorrow we'll have something approaching a completed project. So that's what I'm planning to do for the next few hours at least. Okay. So if you want to ask me questions, you can by all means ask me questions here. This will be pretty straightforward. I'm going to show how we thin paints down, spray them on, that kind of thing. Also use an idea that we didn't use last year, which is painting something that's already painted in black as a pre-shade. So that gives you an idea of how we can build up colour and create something that's fairly interesting to begin with, and then we can create something from that. Okay, does that sound like a plan? That sound like a good idea? Not too boring? Should be okay. And if there's anything while I'm doing this and being filmed and...
Tell them to kill the telephone.
Pardon?
Tell them to kill the telephone. Put it on mute. Put the phones on mute.
Oh yes. Can you, anybody got their phones with them? Anybody got phones? Can you put them on silent for us while we're in here? Unless anybody can tell me how my football team's doing, I don't want any of the phones for the next couple of hours. So, fantastic. Well done. Right. Okay. We've got a very simple setup here, very simple palettes. Nothing that any of you won't have if you use acrylic paints, if you use airbrushes. Who uses an airbrush? Most of you then, yeah. The ideas in here will only be appropriate to people who use an airbrush. The ideas out there will be appropriate to everybody. Okay, so this really in here is a way of getting the base coats down, getting some paint onto this model. But out there, if you paint with a paintbrush, you know, if you use enamels as base coat or any of those things, those techniques will apply across the board. Obviously these techniques are specific to this session. Okay, so what we've got here is airbrush coats up to a compressor, some acrylic paints, some thinners. This looks like wash fluid, but it's basically just an alcohol solution. It's a thinner. We've got some pets, some little mixing cups, some brushes for mixing paint and cleaning everything out, some cotton buds, just normal stuff that you'll have lying around the workshop. Cupful of thinners for cleaning brushes and making sure that that this very expensive custom micron is clean when I finish with this. I don't really want to leave painting this. Okay, and that's pretty much it. We're all ready to go. Okay. Doesn't really matter. This is just sprayed with an aerosol, and it's been left to dry for half an hour. Using Chaos Black, using those kind of acrylics, you don't need to leave them 24 hours to dry, 48 hours to dry. They're workable within half an hour. If it's touch dry, you can work these colours over the top of it, and there'll be absolutely no ill effects on the paint below. The only exception to that would be if you were using enamels as a base coat, and then you were putting enamels over the top, you would need to leave it. But the current generation of acrylics will dry within 5 minutes. And if you use a hairdryer, I think I might have used a hairdryer last year actually, but if you use a hairdryer to dry this paint off, it'll go off in about 30 seconds and it'll be workable on top of that, and you won't have to worry about it at all. Okay, so we have our black model. I feel like I'm getting cold. And we have some paint in here. What we're going to what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this paint pretty much as it comes in the bottle, rather than doing anything clever with it. Normally, because of the ideas that we're going to use over the next few hours, it's always better to paint a model so that it's a lot lighter than it would normally be. Okay, because what you're going to do, if you put layers over the top of that, washes and filtered, which I'll explain later, but all of those layers darken the underlying colour. And if you put colour on top of this that's full strength, that is the finished shade, the model will be very dark when you finish with it, because you've added so many darkening layers over the top of that. So it's always better to try and work on a model, especially a military vehicle like this, and try and tone it down slightly and make it lighter than it will normally appear. So by the time you're finished, you will get it from that light section, light point, up to the colour that it ends up, that you want it to be. Okay, it's an obvious point really. Put varnishes over the top of it, put filters over the top of it, put washes over the top of it, all of those are going to darken the model down. If you want it to retain its original colour, its original shade, work from light to dark, not the other way around, because you cannot lighten it once you start lighting all of the other shades into it. What we have here is a number of colours that are kind of useful for this. Tamiya dark yellow, which is quite a deep colour, and we have desert yellow, which is a much warmer, much yellower colour. Tamiya dark yellow tends to have a slightly green tint to it, and under these lights it looks very green, and you can perhaps see that, and you can see the difference in colour. Can you see that?
Take a finger away.
Can you see that? Yeah, there's a very different, distinct shift. This is quite a brown shade, and this is quite a green shade. And when this goes on the model, it tends to be quite a green colour. So it's always nice to cut this back with something else. One of the colours that we can cut this back with is this. This is flesh. It looks like it's a warm pink colour, like an apricot pink colour, but it's very useful for cutting these shades back. And also white. When lightening up colours, doesn't matter what colour it is, never ever use white, ever, because it will cut it straight back and it will kill the shade. And what you need to do is mix some of this white into this, so that you get a warmer colour, and then mix it into here. Avoid using white as a lightening agent, although it's fairly obvious that that's what it should do, but it doesn't. Okay, so we've got our basic shades in here. So what we'll do with this one, I think, is that we'll mix a little bit of this desert yellow. We'll mix up some of this. We'll put some white into it. But we'll counteract that by mixing a little bit of the flesh in here as well. Okay, and then we'll see what sort of colour we come up. Okay, what we're going to do normally when I'm working, because I tend to work so fast at home, is I mix the colour into the colour cup on the airbrush and then mix the thinners into it. This custom micron here has got a smaller cup than the one I use at home, so I'll mix it into here first, and we'll pour it in. Don't really want to give you any bad habits right from the off. We can work bad habits in later on, but we'll try and sort of be a bit more professional than before we start. Okay, so So, give these a shake. Excuse me wiping my nose. I think I've got a cold in the last 5 minutes, or it's nerves or something else. Okay, so a little bit of the daddy guy. Touch of the flesh. And then a couple of drops of white. End up with quite a pale sand colour. Then, using the pads and some of this thinner. Cut this back. Does anyone remember from last year how you tell whether the colour's thin enough to go into the edge? Remember the trick that I told you?
It makes drops like
One drop at a time. Yeah. Like. It's holding on for dear life. See that? Okay. So this should be thin enough to go through the airbrush. We're going to talk about the consistency of milk, but that's kind of confusing because people say, well, is that full fat milk? Is that half fat milk? Is that semi-skimmed milk? Is that filtered milk? I don't know. Milk's milk. But if you do it like that, you should be fine. It should go through. Model makers being model makers will always throw roadblocks up in front of you and ask you whether or not what you actually mean, in terms of those kind of descriptions. If it goes through the edge, you can test it anyway. So we'll have a bit of a play. The compressor was set at quite a low pressure setting earlier on today, and when you're airbrushing anything, early books, Tony Greenland's book that he published in the 80s talked about spraying paint through at about 10 psi, and that thin paint guns sprayed at 10 psi. I've never found paint went through an airbrush properly at that rate unless it was almost water thin. I tend to work between 15 and 20 psi for anything like spray, and that way it atomises the paint and puts it on in nice smooth rate. It depends on the paint, I guess. Acrylics tend to operate at slightly higher rates. And it also depends on the ambient temperature around you. If you're working in a warm room, obviously the paint atomises more easily. We've got this quite thin. The compressor's set quite high. It's set at what I would normally use at home. So let's see what we can come up with. I'm just going to put a little bit of thin into this brush and spray it out, just to make sure that it's. See that? So it is passing out of the brush, so that's okay. Put some paint in. And test it as well. Yeah, it's perfect. Before you go onto the model and start spraying on the model, it's always a good idea to check. I asked for a few pieces of paper just to check whether or not the paint's passing through the brush. You see this way? Is that good? Okay, see that? Okay. So if we have a little bit of a play with this. See how it's passing through. If it's nice and fine, nice and smooth, we know that it's right. If you get that effect, I force that, but if you get that effect naturally when you're just spraying little spider legs, then the paint's too thin. Okay. If we get an effect where it sort of speckles everywhere, the paint's too thick. In this case, the paint's just right. Okay. But it's always good to have a little bit of a play just to make sure that you're working. And also, beginners, when you start spraying using one of these airbrushes, it's always a good idea just to use a piece of paper like this and spend a couple of hours just spraying on the paper, seeing how it works, get the feel of the airbrush and the balance and where it works. Okay. So what we've got now is we've got our model, and what we're going to do is just we're going to spray this over and see what we come up with. It would seem kind of, because this is black, one of the things that we could do is we could just spray inside the panels, and we could just pick a panel and then we could just work on the panel and just spray the panel like that and use it as a pre-shade. So what we've got then is we've got a slightly darker edge around the edge of the panel. And we can do that over the whole thing. But I tend not to do that. I'm just going to use this black as a shadow colour, and then we're going to work over the top of that and see whether or not we can get some sort of more interesting effect. So the one thing we start off by doing is just blow some paint over this. As this paint's going on, it's almost drying straight away. Okay. We've got some wheels nicely attached on here as well, so we'll just add a little bit of colour onto the centre of these wheels too. Come on, gumshoe. Okay, so now we have a not very black looking model now.Ve got something that's got a little bit of colour on it. Okay, so now we're going to use the black that's underneath to create some kind of shadow on there. You see that okay? You see that all right? Yeah? Okay, so what we'll do is working from the underside of the model onto the top. We'll add the basic colour. And what I'm doing here is I'm spraying inside the detail. Spraying inside the detail from above. So when I turn the model over like that, there's still a dark area underneath the details. That's a shadow. Okay, so you can see it like that. You can see there's colour here. See that? Yeah. If I turn it out like that, you can see that there's a darker area underneath here. So shadow and shading is already on the model. So going back onto the side panels. Rather than spraying in one big block of colour like we did on the top here, work on small areas at a time. And then scribble the colour onto it. What I'm trying to achieve is a random colour, a random pattern. It's not a solid block of colour. At the moment, you've got, and there you can see that, but it's just quite a forced look. There's swatches of the lighter colour, but the underlying black is still showing through way too much, so it just looks like a bit of hodgepodge, a bit of a mess at the moment. But it will all come together, because one of the questions I'm often asked when we do these kind of demonstrations, especially when we're talking about something like this, which I suppose is a pre-shade, is when do you stop doing it? And you certainly don't stop at that point. Okay? This just looks awful at the moment. Okay. So, go back on a second. Larger shapes, such as the mantlet, we're adding a lot more colour onto that because that's where the light is. is where the light is going to fall onto. It's going to fall on the upper surfaces rather than falling on the lower surfaces. A neat trick as well is, if you've already decided, if you're building a model like this and you've decided that you want to put it in some sort of vignette or a diorama, and you've already laid out where that model is going to be, you can force in a highlight. So you can decide that actually, if my model is sat on a base like that, so that your diorama is built from here forward, so that's where you're looking at it. This area here at the front, if that's the piece that your viewer is going to see first, make that lighter than the area behind, so that you're recreating the effect of sunlight falling on it from one direction. And also, that way, if you have something that's of interest on that model, say there's a figure or something in that position, you can light that area up, and then everything behind it can be dark, and it forces that out. And so you're creating almost like a two-dimensional painting, you're creating the effect of a painting, where old masters would have the background dark, but they'd have the area that they wanted people to see and wanted people to concentrate on would be a lot lighter and it would stand out. It's kind of a forced trompe-l'oeil effect, and that way you can create in 3 dimensions what a 2-dimensional artist would have created. So in this case, I think that might be a fun thing to do. We might have the back of this vehicle and the back corner of this vehicle darker, and the front corner will have lighter, and we'll see if we can't create something that's a bit more interesting that way. And then, you know, if this model were ever to appear in a vignette or something, we would paint everything else around that to match that light source. It's kind of a cool thing. Okay, so at the front you can see that there's a lot of colour on here. If you compare that to that area there is still quite dark, but this corner is still really light. Okay, so what we're going to do is we need to make those match. So let's go over it again. Remember, the underlying colour is now dry, so we can work over the top of that. And you can see that the colour is on there properly. Compare that to the top. It's a lot darker. Can you see that? Yeah. Can you see that? So if we compare that side, it's almost full strength now. And you compare it with that side, you can see how much darker that one is. Okay, and you can see where you need to carry on painting to get the effects you need. The back panel there has not got any paint on it at all. And you can see how much darker that is than the remaining model. Okay, so we've got some colour onto this now. So let's go back over this panel. If I'm painting a vehicle like this, I tend to like to have the effects and the colour and the finish as random as I can possibly get it. And one of the ways to do that is to scribble all over it. Basically set the airbrush as fine a setting as I can get it, and then go back over the model and scribble onto the panels. Basically like a child would do on a piece of paper, and it creates random patches that can then be accentuated by other colours that you put over the top of that. So that's what we'll do on here. There's no method in this, it's just go back over the top of it, lots of little random squiggles and scratches. Okay. And then we've created another pattern. Back over it again and blend it back in. Okay? Now, what we need to do on this, at this point, we'll really. What's gloss varnish? Gloss varnish.
Gloss varnish? No. Well, we have Vallejo here, one layer.
A varnish?
Gloss varnish?
Yeah, that'll do.
Can you use that?
Yeah, that'll do. That'll bring me.
Gloss? Semi-gloss? Gloss?
Gloss. Okay, so that's some colour on here. And one of the things that, something that's slightly disconcerting on these, who uses Tamiya acrylics? Yeah, one of the, something that you may have noticed when you're using these acrylics is that they're very flat in terms of colour. And one of the things that happens is that when you've got the model at that stage, if you blow varnish over the top of it, the colour disappears. Have you ever noticed that? Yeah? You noticed that before? The colour starts to shift, and then it goes, and then the underlying colour shines through a bit more. So one of the things that we do to test that is just spray a gloss varnish over the top of it. Johnson's Clear is a good thing to use for this because it seals everything in anyway. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put some model air on it just to see whether or not the colour is, how definite and how distinct the colour is against the background before we start working on something else. Because we don't really want all of that colour to disappear before we start adding all of the washes and weathering and all that kind of stuff on. So once we've done that, then I'm going to start doing some, we'll put a few other little tricks on here just to make things stand out, pop a little bit. One of the things that we'll do is a technique that you've probably heard of, and I think I used a little bit of last year called modulation. Have you heard of that? Anybody heard of that? Yeah. So that's a really easy and interesting way of getting some colour onto these vehicles and making the detail pop slightly. We've got some masking tape, so we'll use some of that, and that will help bring out some of the shapes that are in here before we start adding some of the weathering. And all of the weathering effects will then accentuate what we've got on these basic coats and basic shades. Okay, so we're just waiting to see whether or not he's good man. Does he charge me for that?
Few minutes, you'll get Tamiya gloss instead of Vallejo because the thinners you have there does not mix with Vallejo.
We could just use some water for that, couldn't we? I've got some water on these models at this stage as well. Is that the gloss varnish will allow you to put weathering effects over the top of it and move them around on the surface of the model. Something that you can't do if the model's painted in just flat colours. You might have noticed if you paint a model with a flat finish and then you put a wash over the top of it, one of the things that can happen is that you'll get a watermark where the wash is evaporated and the edge of the wash creates a watermark over the surface of the model. And that's because it's too flat and it soaks into the paint, and where the wash goes, the edge of the wash is where it soaks to. And then when it's dried out, you'll get a slightly glossy bloom on it. If you spray it with a sealing coat of either a satin or a gloss varnish, it will eliminate that completely. And then what you can do over the top of that is you can use a soft brush and some thinners and just blend it away. And it allows you to move those oils and overlaid colours around on the model without it staining the underside of the paint. Because with something that's like this, that's this flat, you'll stain everything and you won't be able to control the washes and the pin colours and all of those kind of things that are on the surface of this. The other thing as well is with these Tamiya acrylics, at this point, that's quite a fragile finish. it's not hard wearing at all. You need something that will seal that in, and we can probably. Thank you very much. Cheers. If we. Can you see that? Yeah. Okay. If we go over this, you can see that's quite fragile. The paint's not very stable at the moment. So we need something that adds a bit of stability on that finish, just to make sure so that when you're working on it, you're not damaging anything underneath. Again, I'll go back to the point I made before I started this. This is a basic setup for what comes afterwards. This isn't a be-all and end-all set of processes. This is just to get the paint on so that then you can work on them and build up the colours and the layers once you put these on. Okay, so we've got some gloss varnish here. We'll spray some of this on. You don't have to be too fastidious when it comes to the colour of this varnish when it goes onto the model. It doesn't still have to be clear. We've got some the thinners that we've got here, and if there's some paint on the brush, that doesn't really matter because the colour is what it is. You're not polluting the shade with much. Okay. Again, just blow it through so that you know that the paint's come through. Let's see how solid the colour is when we spray this varnish. Okay. Can you see that? Can you see how the colour has disappeared away from... It looked like we've got solid colour on there. If I spray the varnish onto the top of the magnet and onto the glass displays on the front of this model, can you see how the black comes back? You see that? So it looked like the model was painted, but once I'd sprayed the varnish on, you could see that shading colour underneath was a bit more apparent. And the reason I'm telling you about this now is if you don't do this stage and you put on your markings and all of those kind of things before you start weathering this, and then you have a couple of layers of varnish, you might find that you've got to the point where you can't correct the underlying colour. It's always a good idea to check these things before you move on to the next stage. All you're doing is adding a single layer of varnish over the top of that just to check what you've got, and then moving on to the next bit. There's a lot of that going in here, isn't it? You need a extractor fan. If people pass out, I know that I spray too much paint out there. Yeah. Or if people start floating around the room, I know that I've breathed too much of it in. Okay, so now what we've got is once this is dry, normally I would blow this over with a hairdryer and set this into place, but once this is dry, we can then have another crack at this. And one of the things that we can do is we've still got some varnish in here, so if we just blow these over onto the wheels. Is if we take leave some of the varnish in the colour cup. Can you just, my sister? I'd like to introduce you to my glamorous assistant for the day. Yes, we'll put some thinners back in here. Take some of the desert yellow and mix it in with the gloss varnish. And now what we're doing is I've created a satin colour coat, okay, that's much more stable and much more resilient than the basic yellow colour that I put on first. And then we can go back over the model. Okay, and just add colour onto it. And this way, because you've got the varnish in there, you know that when this colour's dry, that's the final shade, that's how it's going to appear on the model. And by doing it this way around, there's no need then to seal this in with another layer of varnish.
Spence?
Yeah?
Why don't you do that from the start?
Very good question. Because the reason being is that building up layers of gloss varnish onto a model tends to create a rougher surface than having it with the thin and flat colours at the beginning. Also, I don't want to have 3 or 4 layers of gloss colour on a model for me to work off, because it's then going to what I'm using here is I'm using Tamiya's gloss varnish. And remember I said earlier on that you'd use Johnson's Clear. Johnson's Clear is a much thinner acrylic varnish, and that creates a very smooth surface. I wouldn't normally use this varnish. In fact, I would probably use Purity Seal. I think I mentioned Purity Seal last year. Purity Seal is kind of the ultimate addition to a toolbox for. Purity Seal is the ultimate addition to a toolbox for a model maker that's doing this kind of thing. It's produced by Games Workshop. It comes in a 500 millilitre can, and it's an incredible acrylic varnish. It's satin varnish. Shake it up, spray it on. It goes on like satin. It is literally unbelievable. Also, once it's dry, it's impervious to everything that you put over the top of it, bar cellulose thinners.
So you would prefer that to Johnson?
Yes. Yeah. So what I would do is I would spray it in those very thin matte colour coats to begin with. Put a layer of Purity Seal over the top of it. Then work colour over the top of that, and then put another layer of Purity Seal. We couldn't use Purity Seal in here. You can't spray an aerosol indoors. We'd have all sorts of problems. So we're trying to use an equivalent that would give the same effect. And what you're doing then is you're binding all of those colours in together and creating a hard finish, that hard, smooth finish that we can then work on. Okay, and that's what we're trying to do here. We're just using a different kind of route to get to that point. But Purity Seal is a really good. If you've got a Games Workshop anywhere near you, I think I asked this question. You did have Games Workshop here, didn't you? There's one in Oslo, so you can get that, the Chaos Black and all of those kind of things. So you can get those. It's well worth trying out. You can also use them if there's aircraft modelers on the street. You can also use those on aircraft models as well. It doesn't have to just be for armour. I'm painting an Arado 196 at the moment, a Revell one, and I've used Purity Seal on that, and it works like a charm. And in fact, it's so smooth that I've used it just as my initial coat before I put decals on, and I've had no problems with silvering with the decals. So it's kind of worth adding that to a list of things that you can use. But good question. It's just one, I think really, and make it up as I go along. What can I say? There's no method in all of this. I'll probably paint a model next week and do it completely different. Okay. So we've now got we've got our colour coats on. Just adding a couple of layers of colour onto the top of this, and now we're starting to get quite a nice effect. It's starting to look kind of random, but still kind of neat. And what we're looking for on this, and what this gives us, is a smooth finish. One of the hardest things to achieve as a model maker, on whether it's on an aircraft or an armed vehicle or a car, is a smooth finish. In real life, if you look at any subject, it doesn't matter whether it's a tank or a Ferrari Enzo or an F-16, all of the paint finishes are smooth. You know, you can rub your hands along them when you see them as smooth, and that's very difficult to achieve. But it's very important to achieve on a mould, because once you start adding effects over the top of that, once you start adding weathering, if you've got a finish underneath it that's like concrete, that's going to be picked up. The washes over the top of that are going to pick up that texture, and it's just going to ruin your finish. And you need to make sure that you can get the finish as smooth as possible. Okay, so what we've got here is we've got our hetzer. It's reasonably dry. Okay, with it's fairly smooth. Can I use it too? What I've got here is I've got a cotton cloth. Can you hear that? Okay, just smoothing the finish out so that everything is nice and even. Okay, can you see that? You see that there? Got a fairly even yellow colour over the surface as well. You can now work on it, maybe add a little bit of camouflage over the top of it as well. And also it's not too dark now. It's fairly light. Right. Okay, our original colour here is, we've still got some of this left, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix a little bit of white into this, and then we're going to try and lift some of the colour out of this model. And I think what we'll do is we'll pick a point on the surface of this model, this bit here, and we'll make this our focal point. Okay, so this area here will be lighter than the rest of the model. All under here, around the back, we'll keep that dark, and we'll use, so when this model is displayed, should it ever be displayed, that's the area that people see. So I guess when you're looking at it on a base, it's going to be kind of like that. So that will be the piece that people see first of all. Okay, so the diamond will be like that, that'll be facing the front.
Sorry I didn't find your
No,
tape in a
that's
hurry,
fine.
but
It's the same.
this should do.
Necessity or not first. So now we've created a nice light colour. Okay, so now we've got a lighter colour. So what we're going to do is we're going to start adding a few other things into here. One way to make panels stand out is to try and create some kind of vertical streaking. So that's what we're going to do. Imitates the idea of rain, wash and dirt and that kind of thing. So just pass the airbrush down vertically. Okay. And then what we're going to do, over this corner, we're going to use this light colour and just spray over the corner. Spray on the front edge. On the front of your mouth, so that this area here is lighter than this side. Does that show up? Can you see that?
Camera is good enough to. So I suggest when you finish with this that you can pass it on around.
add an extra layer of lighting to it. So I'll add some lighting to this. So what we've got is we've got a model that's got lots of different shades, some highlighting, some shadows, some areas at the back that are darker, and all of those are all going to start to be unified when we start adding our other bits and pieces of colour onto the surface of that. It's difficult under these kind of lights and with everything else to be able to sort of get those ideas across. But it's kind of a nice, simple way of doing things. Okay. And what you can do as well is to make the vehicle pop. You can mask off other panels onto it, so you can have different panels around the vehicle and slightly lighter colours and slightly darker colours. Make wheels next to each other. Make one of the wheels slightly lighter than another one, just to kind of pop the details slightly. Okay, but it's all just a way of making it a little bit more interesting to look at. Don't force it too much though, you don't want to have too many colours on it. This modulation technique has been used a lot recently, and a lot of the high-end guys are using it, but I've seen a lot of other people use it where they've got bolts next to on hatches that look like they've actually been painted on the real vehicle in completely different colours, and it kind of looks forced and slightly ridiculous, to be honest. Okay, but this is just a way of sort of popping that kind of detail out. And again, I reinforce these are the first steps. This is almost the quickest part of any vehicle build. If you're painting an armoured vehicle, this bit is the easiest and the quickest to do, because you're just laying on colour and you're just laying on the original kind of base bits before everything else comes up. And the airbrush takes the back step then. That's been done, you've used that, and then we go back to traditional tools and ideas using these things, using paintbrushes and oils and all of those kind of things to create something that's a little bit it's more interesting, more dynamic as a set of systems to make what you've got in your hand there, a plastic model, look like, hopefully like a real vehicle at the end of the process. So once we've got to this stage, and once I've got the paint on to that stage, then again it will be sealed, using purity seal, something like that, using a gloss varnish, and then we can work on creating the weathering effect. Okay, is there any questions? Nobody? What football team just scored?
Liverpool.
Good boy, good answer. Anybody else for Liverpool?
Yep.
No? Liverpool? Good. Anybody else? Good lads. 3 of us in the room, that's okay. I'll buy you a pint, I'll buy you a pint, I'll buy you a pint. See, if you all put your hand up, you can have a drink. You sit there. Okay, so, but these, I'll reinforce as well what I said before. These techniques for creating lighting and shading on a model and base coats, these can also be used on aircraft. It depends on how you want to go about painting something. If you want to paint it so that it's a 360-degree study, so that wherever you look at it, it looks the same, then this technique probably wouldn't work. The reason that I'm painting it in this way is that I've always got in my mind that at some point this is going to become part of the diorama or part of the vignette. Okay, and when you're painting a vehicle so that it is part of something else, you need to take into account something like a light source. And in natural light, in reality, the light source is always in one place. The sun is never all the way around. It always creates a shadow. It's always like these lights are at the moment. They're creating shadows and they're creating highlights on everything. And that's really what this is all about, trying to create that idea. And once you start to think about the model in that way, it becomes almost an instinctive thing. And if you think about the way that you paint figures for a diorama, if you're painting figures, figure painters add highlights and shade onto their figures, and they always tend to have it lit from a certain point, whether it's the top of their head, over their shoulder, that kind of thing. So it makes sense to have the vehicles that go with those figures painted in the same way. Okay. Does that make sense, or is that sounding like a load of witchcraft? Does that make sense? It's a Liverpool fan at the back, does that make sense to you? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Kenny Dalglish make sense to you? Absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. Luis Suarez make sense to you? Finished. Or a German aircraft that's got modelling on it is doing that modelling. I think last year I went through a little phase of showing people how to paint modelling onto a model, because there's the impression that when you've got, you're painting your, whether it be an aircraft or whatever, then you go onto the model and you've got your basic shape and you think, well, I'll put the modelling on, so you go like this, kind of, all over it. And so you start with big panels of colour, and that's how, and then you work modelling around that. And that becomes, when you're working on something that's small, you need to start off small. So rather than do that, what we're going to do with this is start off with a small area, and then build the colour up gradually. Okay? And that way you can create the shape that you want. Okay. Not like that. Remember I told you earlier on that the paint was too thin? You see what happened there? That was one of those happy little accidents. You see that? Okay. So what we'll do, turn the compressor down. Try again. And can you see how by having thin paint and lower pressure you get much more control? Okay, remember, we don't want that. Believe me, you'll only want to do that on a model once. And because with that, you're going to have to leave that to dry, sand it out, refinish the area, and then go back to it. But if you've got nice thin paint, and you work on it in small areas, you can see that you're going to get much. With an airbrush like this, you really should be getting, maybe millimetre, half mil lines. Okay, and build small patches, bit by bit. Okay? You see that? Yeah, does that make sense? Remember, spider's legs, not good. Okay? And don't, keep the airbrush, keep it close, put the, have the air running through the brush and then pull the needle back. Don't go onto the brush, onto the model with the needle already back, okay, because you're going to end up losing control and you'll end up doing stuff like that, okay? Go onto it nice and easy. Don't shake like I'm shaking at home. I'm not sure if that's not a sambuca. I think it might be. Pero loves sambuca. It's not a good preparation for a demonstration. Okay, right. So, can we all see what I was trying to achieve on the headset? Does that kind of make sense? Is there anybody here that doesn't like that? You don't have to be shy, because we're trying to, is there anybody that doesn't like the appearance of that at the moment, but would rather have it done in a more traditional way?
To diehards, it's a bit revolutionary.
Yeah, is that what you think? Yeah, is that what you think? Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's very interesting.
yeah.
But when you get home and you're going to do it yourself, you're sort of struggling
Right.
mentally.
The fear of it.
Yes.
Yes, and in some ways, in many ways, that's a good thing. I think with these kind of techniques, it's sometimes okay for me because I build models, 7 days a week, full time. So if I make a mess of one of these models, then I've really only lost half a day, and then I can go back and I can kind of do something else. I'm always conscious of the fact that model makers who I demonstrate to have probably only got a couple of hours in an evening, maybe 3 or 4 evenings a week, and if paint finishes goes off the rails, that could be another couple of weeks to get that back on, and all of those kind of things. What I would suggest, if you are interested in doing these kind of models and creating these kind of effects, is have a model on the bench that you are happy just to overspray all the time. You don't have to worry about the detail. Just have something old that's there, spray it in primer, grey primer, or black, or whatever, and then just use that to test effects and see which ones you like. Because there are plenty of ideas and techniques that I've tried out with models that I just thought were balls, to be honest. And I thought they're rubbish, they don't look right, they've not suited me at all. And although I'm a bit of a sponge for these kind of ideas and these kind of techniques, I like to try them out. Not everything is going to work for everybody all the time. It would be kind of unusual if that was the case. So some things will work for you, and you might find you'll do something and go, oh, I really like that, I'm really happy with that, and that will then push you and develop you in other areas. So I'm absolutely fine with all of those kind of things. These techniques and these ideas for today were a way of really expanding out what I did last year. I could have done the same demonstrations I did last year, but you'd all been nodding off and going out and having a sandwich and a coffee. And I wanted to try and do something that was a little bit, that stretched those ideas a little bit further. But I'm absolutely fine with people saying they're not comfortable with doing that, because it gives me a way of gauging whether or not, how the hobby's developing, how it's moving on, how painting effects are moving on. Maybe I'll be there in 5 or 10 years' time. We all turn the clock back 25, 30 years, and we go back to painting, washing, dry brushing, all of those kind of things, because they become new to the next generation of models with like that techniques. So that's absolutely fine. Okay. So right, so we've got our model. It's very dry now. Okay. So what we'll use, I think we'll just do a green finish on this. Okay, I'm going to leave the yellow that's in the colour cup in there, and that way I can create a lighter colour with this with the green. But not that light. Now this is where the nerves kick in, because you're at that point on the model. You've got your base colours in place. You've got some green in the colour cup, you're bringing the tip of the edge to the model, and you're thinking, right, is this going to work, or am I going to blow paint all over it and it's going to spit and that's going to be it? One of the problems that I've got at home is that I work outside in an outside workshop that is affected adversely by ambient temperatures, and it's also affected by damp. The workshop itself's not damp, but if the air's damp and it's drawing air through into the compressor, it doesn't matter whether I've got 14 inline moisture traps on there and a moisture trap on the bottom of here, I can guarantee that water is going to go through the tube, it's going to go through the pipe, and I'm going to put it on here and it's going to blow coloured water all over the model. Okay. So one of the ways to do this, to start this off, is don't spray into the middle of the biggest panel you can find. Okay. So what I would suggest you do instead is pick a part of the model that is going to be the least visible to you, and that way you can test whether the paint's flowing through the brush. In this case, probably what we could do is pick the back of the model here, because remember what we said, this is going to be the bit that faces everybody, and you know, that's going to be the least visible. We could pick this back corner here as well, okay? And then, rather than going into the middle of the panel, start off on one corner. And have the first little bit of colour just on the corner. And that way, you know whether the paint's flowing through the brush or not, okay? I think actually I've made this colour slightly too light. I don't think you can't see that, can you? No. It's called stealth paint. Lockheed Martin paint. Okay, so let's start on this area here. Remember what I said about small patches? Start off slowly and then build the colour up. Yeah, is that showing up on there? It's always tempting when you're doing these camouflage patterns to kind of rush through it, because I don't think there's anything more boring than doing modelling on an aircraft. Anybody that's built a Yonkers 88 Night Fighter or something along those lines will know how tedious it is putting all those tiny little spots onto an aircraft that takes you 14 years to do. But one of the things you have to do is you have to make sure that when you're working on this, that you work on a small area at a time, work on one panel at a time, make sure that's finished, then move on to the next panel, make sure that's finished. And then, if you're bored with it, or you can feel your hands wavering, or your concentration's moving on, and you're starting to think about, you know, what's for tea or what's on the telly, then put it down and move away from it. Because what you'll do is that those smaller controlled areas of colour will start to become bigger, and they'll start to okay, if I working in very small areas at a time, there's no overspray on those. There shouldn't be anything like that, okay? You're not going in and just putting on big pattern of paint and trying to work around. You're working in tiny little areas and just building those up. So almost those big swatches of colour that are on there are almost made of very small dots of colour that all align together and create a pattern. And in that way, you create edges that are nice and smooth and feathered in to the rest of the model. In the same way that you would, if you were painting an aircraft, you would work in there, you would spray the edge and you'd spray away from the edge and then build the colour behind that. Okay, it's exactly the same technique and it maintains a crisp finish. Yeah.
What needle size do you prefer?
This has got fine head assembly on it, I think. Is that right? Is this a fine? This custom microns 0.35?
Yeah, I think so.
0.3 head assembly. Yeah. Okay. But you get a nice. The finer the head, the better it is, really. But you can still get, if you've got a standard airbrush head, if you've got a 0.5 head assembly in there, you'll still get those effects. It's as much down to the consistency of the paint and the ratio of thinness to paint as it is about the airbrush. I've seen models who use cheap airbrushes with larger head assemblies than a custom micron and get exactly the same effects. You don't have to go out and spend £250 on an expensive airbrush like this. You can get similar effects on lower level airbrushes. And I think, in fact, one of the things I did last year is I brought a Premier G35 airbrush in here that's sold back home by the airbrush company, which was £40. And that airbrush will give those effects with using exactly the same materials and the same techniques. So it isn't always about the cost of it. It helps. It helps, you know, as you get better, the better you are at using the tool, you know, you may want to keep stepping up and create something with more expensive tools. That's a given. Okay. Pardon? Anybody else? You know, and it's bringing a very basic model to life. Okay? And I'm a firm believer in, when I was speaking about this model yesterday, the comment was, well, it's not very detailed, it's not a very good model, you know, I don't think we'll do anything with it. My feeling on this is, it's not about how detailed the model is underneath, it's about what you do with it. Some of the nicest models I've ever seen have been ones that have been built from the box from older kits, but they've been painted in a really nice way, you know, and they've got a really nice finish on them, and they just look, you know, brings these things to life. And that's one of the reasons why there's been a recent upsurge in people who've gone out, who built models when they were a kid, and have gone out, learned all of these ideas and all of these techniques, and thought, well, I'd like to build some of those kits now that I built when I was a kid, and see whether or not I can create something really worthwhile with it. So that's what we'll do. So what we'll do is, I'll finish painting the camouflage on this, okay, and then what I'm going to do is have a bit of a break, and then we're going to weather this, okay, and I'm going to paint this and weather it the way that I would paint and weather something of my own properly. Now, is anybody interested in it? Really, those doing the weathering like that, this doesn't. It's not suitable for in here because it's kind of too close in. I'm going to have to kind of concentrate on it. But is anybody keen to watch me do that? Yeah? No? Yeah? Do you want to watch me do that? Yeah? So, and what I thought we could do is kind of make that, maybe, it might be fun actually, to make that almost an interactive thing. Okay? So, we could have the model painted, have it sealed up, and then try some ideas. But then maybe the guys who are going to watch and want to have a go could then actually have a go on the model themselves at certain ideas or certain techniques. Okay, this model is just something that we're going to use over this, and then that way you can say, I can see how you do it, and you can say, well, I'd like to have a go at that, and then we can have a bit more of a hands-on approach to it, so that it becomes a collective, really. Okay, and then that way you'll maybe learn a technique by actually being shown and having a go for yourself, have it pointed out where you're not maybe doing it right, or you are maybe doing it right, So is anybody interested in that, actually having a hands-on go on this one? Yeah, is that something that might be a bit of fun? Okay, it's nothing serious, it's just, you know, and for people who are a bit, you know, shy of putting their hands up and saying, ask a question, if it's in an informal setting, we can have a bit of a laugh with the whole thing. See what yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. We can have a bit of a party. We can have the Hetzer painting party. That's what we're going to do. IPMS Norway's Hetzer painting party. And if people will find out about these things in years to come, and there'll just be a melee of people turning up with Hetzer's beer and paint. That's what we'll do. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. I hope it wasn't too long or too tedious, it was okay. But really, as far as this little model is concerned, this little project, we've made a start on it, but really the fun part of it starts now that this is done. Okay, and you guys can have a go for yourself using some of the tools that we've got. We've got plenty of paint, haven't we, and bits and pieces. So have a go, and then we'll see what we kind of come up with. Okay, thank you very much.
Getting closer, eh?
Get any closer and you get mottling in your face.
So we don't want to use kind of put on the paint hard and tone it down with the sand.
No, try and you can do that. And that works really well actually. Putting on dark and then toning it down. But I tend to like to try and keep as few steps as I can.
I built a tiger doing the sand. First I put on the green and red and sand and shone it. But I didn't use this technique, so I'm not sure how it attacks the web.
It might, yeah, it might kill that a little bit.
Yeah.
Only a little bit though.
Yeah, but if you make the pre-shading a bit harder,
I think you have 5 more minutes before you and I have to set up.
Oh right, I'll shift out the way. How are you?
Fine, and I will hurry. Just take your time.
Well, we can clear it. I can finish this off.
I guess it's okay. So, as I said, I'm in the
Was that okay?
Yeah, it's great. I should have put my camera over here.
Her så det Juha Airo fra Finland. Han bilbygger og skal vise oss en teknikk med vinduer som vel den største svakheten med bilhuset i dag tykkelsen på vinduer og kvaliteten. Juha har en teknikk som han skal vise oss som kan fikse på det. Dette den første gangen han har en sånn type presentasjon, så jeg litt usikker på hvordan det går. Men han har en jukseeksempler med seg og sånne ting, så vi satser på program. Han har 1 time, så har vi en halvtime dødtid etterpå, så hvis han forsinket, så kan det gå over en time her, i og med at det relativt nytt. Men halvannen time da bør det meste ha gjort. 1.5 hour maybe. Dette med å si?
Telefoner av. Av med telefoner. Sett på mute.
Av med telefoner. Sett på mute, så det slår inn på systemet. Ja, bra. Da sier jeg bare vær så god. Welcome, and hope we get this through.
Okay, thank you, Atle and arrangers, for giving me this opportunity to present some of my modeling techniques. There is no specific technique mentioned in a program, so to speak, and each of us have his or her own techniques they have developed during the years. And I build model cars, and building model cars often includes chemicals, techniques in which poisonous chemicals, paints, fillers and so on are to be used. So obviously that kind of demonstration is not a good one for this kind of opportunity or so. So while thinking what would be a good compact topic for this presentation, I decided to talk about window glass, how to do window glass model cars. To start with, somebody would comment that why go through that trouble. Most model car kits do come with window glass. Just glue it in place and call it a day. But that might not exactly be the question. Besides in addition to certain obvious things like scratch building when there is no window glass to start with, or when you make a mess, you have to replace the ruined window glass with something. But the most obvious reason for replacing kit supplied window glass is the fact that there are certain problems with use of kit windows. What I have here is AMT Chevy Impala kit, which is actually I guess I'm going to sit down. This is a AMT 67 Chevy Impala kit. It's basically a very good model car kit. It's basically very well engineered. It comes with a detailed chassis, not shown here, and engine parts and so on. And it does come with window glass. Here is the rear window and here is the windshield. And this kit has been engineered in such a way that it would be very easy for a beginner to complete this kit. Just put the windshield in the correct place. There are the locators here, so, and add a drop of glue here, and here you have very easily done window glass. And the same goes for the rear window as well. I don't know exactly what you can see that through that camera, but the way this kit was engineered means that there are some obvious problems with these clear parts. In order for these clear parts to fit properly that motor car body, there are locators and there are areas for locating this part correctly, which means that this is not completely straight, one piece, one simple straight piece like 1:1 scale window glass. There are, around the perimeter of this window glass, there are areas where the material thickness is different than in the middle. And all this results in the fact that these windows act like eyeglasses, for example, like a magnifying glass. There's a marked optical distortion. As I said, it's very easy to glue this glass in place. It doesn't stay put, but it's very easy to do. And here I have one similar kit with window glass glued in place. It didn't take me very long to glue this glass in place, a few minutes, and it fits perfectly. But once you look through the windshield, if you put something behind the windshield, these problems with the thickness and optical distortion are very obvious. You might not see them through this camera everywhere in this room, but when you put this on, when I put this on table, and if somebody takes a closer look at this one, these problems are very obvious. And it may not sound like much, some obvious optical problems. But in order for any model to look realistic, there shouldn't be that kind of problems. So something should be done to that problem area, the window glass. This doesn't concern all model car kits, but most model car kits have window glass that most model car kits do come with the window glass which has more or less serious problems. And what I am going to do now here today is to replace these optically bad window glass with ones made by myself. And if there will be enough time, I will show you how to tint model car windows. Most of you may not have paid any attention to the fact that most modern cars come with tinted windows. The windows are not completely clear like this glass, but they are slightly greenish or bluish, for example, like this here. In the winter conditions, like outside now, if you look at the modern car and there's white snow in the background, this tinting will come very obvious. And personally, I'm not aware of any model car kit that comes with correctly tinted windows. So we'll try this window tinting as well if there will be enough time after doing that normal window glass first. I have here some materials. Maybe we can go with these in more detail later on when I do the tinting. But for this window glass, the material can be quite important. I mean, the choice of the material. I have here several different materials which is used for this window glass. First, I have this KNS plastic sheets, and this says that this is PETG, polyethylene terephthalate. Then another material would be this one here. By the way, here you see the tinting, it's just been done by me. This material is clear PVC, polyvinyl chloride. Both these materials are available at better hobby shops. Then there is the traditional material, which is traditionally used for replacing kitchen-like windows. This is so-called acetate. I don't know exactly what this is chemically. Somebody said that this is cellulose acetate. I'm not sure about this. And then finally we have this that stuff that everyone is most likely familiar with, evergreen clear plastic, polystyrene. Which one these materials is to be used for replacing or making window glass for model car kits? I cannot give you one simple answer. Some of these materials bend quite nicely, like this one. So like this, without any obvious problems. There won't be any cracks or hair cracks or whitening or something like that. Other materials, for example, evergreen clear plastic. If you try to bend this one, there will be hair cracks, there will be whitening, and then the material will break in two. Obviously, this material is not the best one for curved window glass. However, if you are doing completely straight glass, this is a good material for that one. If you look at those cars that I brought here, finished models, none of those cars has straight window glass. It's obvious that windshields are curved and the rear windows are curved, but in most cases also side windows are curved. So this is one detail that the builder should pay some attention to. And then I have here clear PVC which can be bent to a certain point. And it looks quite good when you bend it. There will be no cracks or widening. However, if you use this material and glue it in a bent position, it will be okay today, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, but after a month there will be hair cracks. And after a year there will be real cracks. So I don't suggest using clear PVC for heavily curved window glass. This material, traditional acetate, this bends very nicely. You can bend it 180, 360 degrees without getting any problems. And it stays bent and it won't crack. However, this, if anybody is familiar with old American promo cars, which were molded in acetate plastic in 50s, early 60s. A very prominent feature with those models is the fact that they warp with time. And so does this acetate. This cannot be used for straight windows, no way. You might be able to use this for curved windows, but only for small area windows. For example, for this one, I believe that this is all too big to be made out of acetate. This one this fact I have personally learned by making mistakes. I have old model cars which started looking very good, but a couple of years after they have been finished, the windows have been warped. It's very annoying, something you can't do anything about. So my suggestion is for straight windows using evergreen, clear polystyrene, and curved windows, my suggestion is using this PETG, polyethylene terephthalate, or polymer, as it says. And somebody might wonder what this G means. It means glycol, alcohol, which is there to make this more easily bent. So I am told I don't manufacture this stuff. Okay, and one more thing before we start. This technique is good for windows which are curved in only one direction. For example, this one. This curves like this one. This one. However, if there is curvature shown, and if the window glass curves towards the roof, then there compound curvature. You cannot bend straight, clear plastic sheet into two directions simultaneously. That is completely out of question. So in those cases, when there's compound curvature, this method doesn't work. You have to vacuum form. And that technique I won't go into any detail here. This 64 towns here, it has compound curvature with it. It was vacuum formed by me using this here KNS plastic sheet material. But it could be a topic for completely different presentation. So, on to the actual hands-on part of this presentation. Okay, maybe I can say a few words about tools needed for this, like X-Acto knife, some sandpaper, some paint, and in some cases evergreen styrene strips. That's all. And the idea behind this all is to carve channels around the window opening inside the body. These channels are those areas where the glue is being put and the window glass is forced into those channels. And in best cases, you not necessarily would even need glue. If you scribe in those channels properly, the window glass will stay put without any glue. But of course, it's best to secure the glass in place with some glue. So, and as I said, this is a new, relatively new kit with such engineering that the original kit part fits very well, meaning that here there is no area inside the body here where I could glue any window glass cut out of plane straight as a tape. So I have to scribe in the channels. And that might not be very nice to watch when I scribe into channels, but I didn't do it beforehand in order to show you that it can be done. So it will take some time when I actually scribe in these channels with this X-Acto knife. By the way, I use surgical blades with my X-Acto knife. They are much sharper than regular blades, and this scribing might go a little faster with this one. So, but as I said, this is quite tedious work and it takes its time. The channels do not have to be very big or large. It's important that they provide something that you can force the window glass into. While doing so, while scribing in these channels, I will remove material from inside the body. One must be quite careful while doing this, because in the worst scenario you will scribe through from inside. But on the other hand, while scribing these channels, the new glass will be closer to the surface, I mean this outer surface, when the material is quite thin here. And it makes the end result look more realistic. As I said, this is quite tedious work and it will take several minutes or tens of minutes almost when I have scribed in the channels for this windshield. And there is no easy way to get away with this, doing it fast. So if I had an extra copy of this kit, I could have scribed in these channels beforehand and to show it to you by showing the model to you. I won't do that because I don't have it. But here is one model which I'm not sure if I can, if you promise not to drop it. It's a work in progress. I have glued in the window glass using this technique. So if you are very careful and don't drop it, because it will be my next finished model. But you can see that the material that I used for that one is straight, plain, clear plastic sheet. There's a tinting in that material. While looking at that model, you will also notice that I have painted, before gluing the window glass in, I have painted all these channels black. That is because the model itself is not molded in black or gold color. And because of that fact, if the plastic shows through in these channels, it won't look very realistic. So painting these areas black after the channels have been scribed in gives a more realistic appearance, and in most one-to-one scale cars there are some kind of rubber sealing around window glass or window trim. So that is sort of a replicating that feature as well. As I said, this this will take several minutes to do properly, and this can be quite messy because I will remove plastic around the window posts and around the window opening inside the body. And another method for this one, if you don't want to strip the channels and the material thickness is too heavy, you can glue plastic strips around this window opening on the inside. So these plastic strips, I can show, but I won't do the windshield that method, but I can show the basic idea with this one. The basic idea with this one is to glue plastic strip around the window opening inside on all the four sides, and then cut exactly the correct size piece of this clear plastic and put it here. That way you don't have to remove any material. But if this area here is too thick to start with, it won't look very realistic because the material thickness doesn't correspond the same in the 1-to-1 scale car. But as I said, I will now do it different way. I will describe in the channels because these 8 pillars are done in such a way that you cannot glue anything inside of these. It will look much more thicker and not very realistic at all. So I will continue this work. If anybody has any questions pertaining this what I have already presented, I can answer while proceeding with this scribing.
Are you doing the same with the resin parts?
Yeah, you can do the same with the resin part. The material itself is not critical. However, it must be taken into account that resin is much more brittle than regular styrene plastic. So it's much easier to break the model while doing this scribing. And yes, I forgot to say one thing. It's best to do the scribing before the body has been painted. Because when you scribe in here and make a mistake, for example the blade will slip, it's very easy to correct when the body is unpainted, but on the painted body it will ruin the entire model.
And the styrene strips, do you use that on resin parts too?
Yeah, you can use styrene strips on resin parts as well, and what I prefer for glue is super glue. There is actually quite much tension here when you force the glass in the curved configuration. If you use regular plastic glue, you have to let it dry several days, otherwise it will start to move by the force coming from the window glass which has been forced into the correct configuration. So I just continue scribing. I have no idea how long this will take because I have never dating any time while doing window glass for a model car. And for that body that you may have somewhere around. If you still have it. So what is still running? So it might look quite simple, the shape of that car, the shape of the windows. But if you take a closer look, you can see that there's quite much glass in that simple shape. There are windshield and rear windows, those are quite obvious, but side windows. There are two side windows, two separate side windows on that body, and it's a two-door car body. If it was to be a four-door car body, there would be more separate windows. And then one feature into which I may come later on is those side door windows, rolled down door windows. That is one additional detail that I like to add to my models, and it increases the let's say it creates an illusion in which the end result will look more realistic. That too is a very small feature as such, but all these small details are important in creating the illusion of the real thing. On one-to-one scale cars, there's always a slot here where the window glass goes. And when the window glass has been completely rolled down, there's a slot here. And if you look into the slot, there's a window glass to be seen. Gluing interior pieces to body size here without any slot is the easy way, but it doesn't look very realistic. And adding, leaving a small gap there and adding a part of the window glass there will add quite much to the realistic, will add quite much to the appearance of the finished model. And those rolled down side windows, they are actually very easy to do. That doesn't take this much time as this channel scribing.
It's a kind of dentist son there.
Yeah, maybe. One thing I forgot to mention when I talk about why to do this is the fact that if the kit does come with a decent looking window glass, it's relatively thin and it fits well without any optical distortion like here. If the perimeter of the kit window glass looks nice, this doesn't. There is no reason to do this. Only in those cases that it looks bad. Because it's very easy to make a total mess with the model car while doing this. If you don't have polished the technique completely. So I don't suggest that each and every model car kit window glass would be replaced with acetate or clear plastic sheet. Only in those cases when the window glass either doesn't fit well or there's severe optical issues with it. In general, older model car kits or model car kits that were engineered in the 60s or 70s are much better in this respect than modern model car kits. This 67 Chevy was engineered in the 90s. And here is basically the same car, 67 Pontiac Bonneville, which comes with similar window glass. That is an old MPC annual kit from 67. By the way, bought me newly back in 1967. But that one has been restored, obviously. But anyway, the window glass used to come with that kit looks much better than the window glass with this newly engineered kit. Quite strange, but that's the way it is. So I continue scribing. In some cases you have to scribe quite much. For instance, or especially modern American model car kits are much thicker than, for example, Japanese car kits. So the material thickness around these window openings is usually bigger in American kits than Japanese kits.
A typical example is the 51 Chevy from MTR.
Yeah, 2 millimeters or something. Yeah. So, and you have to be careful that you don't scribe too.
Is there a way to use a scriber or do you use an electric tool?
Never use an electric tool. The material thickness is quite thin here. And I'm afraid that if you use an electric tool, the heat will make some bad distortion to the areas. It will be, when I now look at this I would say that it is a fraction of a millimeter, and I guess that even minimum heat would make some warping.
But when you're using a resin body?
Actually, resin, in my opinion, resin is easier to strike. The material looks harder, but it is easier to strike. At least this type of the channels are easier to strike on resin body. And that Dutch Miranda that which is somewhere around there, it is actually resin.
I have control.
So I continue with this one. One idea here is to get these the inside as much as parallel as the outside. So I have to scribe the inside of I have to scribe around the window opening on the inside so that the glass that I would glue here would be parallel all the way. If this one is like this, pointing in a different direction, so it would be very difficult to glue in the windshield, the new windshield. So this will take some time because of that fact. And as I said, this is somewhat messy, this is time consuming, and the end result may not always be flawless. But in general, in my opinion, this is something that will make the end result in general look much better than the original window glass. So, in my case, I don't remember when was the last time that I used kit-supplied window glass for my models. It must be over 10 years or something like that. I have been doing this for ages.
So if you often scratches there, the whole car, don't you?
Yeah. So, and yeah, actually, when there was talk about resin kits. The resin kits can be, in this respect, somewhat problematic because of the fact that the windows are usually blocked in resin kits. And that blocking has to be done usually by adding tape inside the window opening. And that's simply because of the molding technique. And it will add to the thickness of these areas. So you have to usually remove much more material from resin bodies than regular styrene bodies. How long has this already been going on? Has anybody checked?
20 minutes, something like that. 15 maybe, I don't know. No one sleeps yet, so it's okay.
Okay, then when you think you are satisfied with the channels, you can try to check how everything looks from the outside. Are there messy edges or ripples or something like that which has to be removed? Obviously, in this case, there are those original glass locators which have to be removed because they would show through the windshield. So I am cutting them off. So maybe I can put this in the circulation right now, so you can briefly take a look at the windshield opening on the inside. There are channels which didn't exist 20 minutes ago. Okay, and while you are looking at that, I have another similar body here. The next thing is to to do the actual window. And in my method, I don't use this original glass as a template. I proceed so that I put this clear plastic sheet in front of the window opening, and then I do a very rough tracing. Like here. So, taking into account the fact that the window is curved and the material there has to be enough material for the curvature. And the next thing is then simply to roughly cut the window out of this clear sheet. Oh yes, one thing that I forgot to mention is the thickness of this sheet. I have no idea what would be the correct thickness if you compare it to 1:1 scale car window glass, dividing it by 25. I don't know what would be the end result for that one. Two things that have to be taken into account while choosing the thickness of the material what are they? The first one is the fact that the material has to be bendable. If the material is too thick, you cannot bend it. Not enough to fit in the window opening. And on the other hand, if the material is too thin, it's very easy to bend. But when you glue it, you get easily wrinkles or waves. It doesn't stay put in a straight configuration. So it's balancing between these two things. The thicker the material, the more difficult it is to glue in. The thinner the material, the more problematic staying put in a straight configuration will be. The material I usually use is 0.24 millimeters, which is 0.01 inches. That suits me the best, but this is not to say that the other thicknesses wouldn't be okay as well. And this of course goes for 1/25 scale.
Do you know a good internet store that sells shades?
This K&S plastic sheet, this is available via internet from K&S themselves and at least from Micromark. And of course this evergreen styrene clear plastic is available at most hobby stores. And as I said, there are several other materials. Some are sold in hobby stores and some are sold in arts supply stores. As I mentioned, this is something that I can recommend that can be recommended by me, but personally I don't think that I have found the ideal material for this purpose yet. So I'm looking for the best possible material.
Is it easy to scratch?
Sorry?
Is it easy to scratch the clear sheet?
Yeah, actually, yeah, that is something that I should come soon. Yes, the scratching can be a problem. Yes, and then there are other things as well. Some materials do scratch easier than other materials. The best material when it comes to scratching, I mean, that doesn't get easily scratched is this traditional acetate sheet. But as I said, it tends to warp with time, and so it is not an ideal material. This KNS plastic sheet PETG, it does scratch, but not as easily as some other materials. PVC is in this respect the worst material. It scratches very easily. So it cannot be recommended in that respect. But there are other things to be taken into account as well. One is the fact that if you are going to tint the glass, like here, the tinting will not adhere to every material. Some materials are so that they will be fish eyes easily. It can be very difficult to tint correctly. But if you are not tinting your glass, so that is not a problem. And as I said, I'm still looking for the best possible material for this one. Okay, now I have here a roughly cut windshield, very roughly cut windshield. And now I would need the body to fit this windshield. Because you cannot cut the windshield in advance in the correct size. You have to roughly cut it into a correct size and then continuously fit it and remove material until it fits flawlessly. So, and I put it, I press it with my 2 fingers on the inside of the window opening. And I noticed that the windshield is all too big. So I have to remove material by trial and error until the window glass fits perfectly. And this is something like scribing in those channels. This can take invariable amount of time. But if this step is done properly, it's possible that the new windshield or new glass, it will fit without any glue at all. The tolerances are actually very small here, and you have to be very careful not to cut too much.
If you have to use super glue, is it some super glues that are better than others?
No.
In the gases or?
I use this, what do I use? Loctite super glue. That works well for me, but there's a trick. Super glue tends to fog clear parts. Everyone knows that.
Yes.
Or is that a myth? Okay, I try to fit and speak simultaneously so that we won't have to sit here for ages. Yes, I have something here on the table. Here, can you read it? This is model wax, and this is my trick. Model wax is my trick. Before gluing the glass in, I wax it with this stuff. The wax will significantly reduce the fogging. And should the glass still fog, even though it has been waxed, it will be much easier to remove the waxing, the fogging with new application of wax. But I'm not completely sure if this stuff is still available. Can anybody verify? Can you still buy the treatment for the wax? You can, okay. Because there was a time that I tried to order it from my American suppliers and it was always out of stock. But maybe it was only temporary.
I know they resized the cans to smaller boxes.
Okay, but they are still available in cans. Plastic or glass. Or is it nowadays available in tubes or what?
No, they used to be bigger. Last year there have been smaller jars, like this one.
Okay, yes, so.
You lay a thick layer or just polishing it with the wax?
It's like polishing. It's likely that if you use, for example, PVC material, it gets scratched in this process, and you have to remove the scratches with this wax. So the wax is basically for two purposes: for removing possible scratches and reducing the fogging induced by super glue. This model wax is quite unlike modern car waxes. This doesn't work in a similar way. The action of this treatment model wax is similar as that of age-old one-to-one scale car waxes. It removes material. It's an abrasive. It doesn't add a new coat. So, and that's the basic how these scratches can be removed. And now I see a few scratches in this finish. Removing these scratches from clear plastic can be quite tedious as well. I don't think that I will go into removing that, but I might be able to show another trick when how to get rid of these scratches or irregularities around the perimeter of the window glass. Okay, now the fit is not yet perfect. I have to check where the problem lies. At least it doesn't stay put, but it doesn't do that always. In some cases, that does not always. In some cases, you have to deepen the channels in certain places to make the fit better. And you have to constantly check from the outside that you don't cut through and ruin the finish or ruin the outside area. And that's why this is recommended to be done before painting. Of course, while you paint the model, some paint will get into these grooves, and you have to remove that paint before gluing the windows in after painting. But that is not any major task. So let's see if that will fit better. And you have to always check from the inside and from the outside, because some blemishes cannot be detected from one side only. And you might get some scratches, as I mentioned. You can try to polish them off with this model wax, or if the scratches are not in the middle of the windshield or in the middle of the glass, if they are around the perimeter, there are another method for making them less noticeable. So, okay, there's now a moderate fit. I can make it slightly better still by removing slightly more material here, avoiding cutting through. You can see that this takes some quite much effort from me, a person who has been doing this more than 10 years. So it's quite obvious that when you try first time this on a model car, I don't suggest that you try it on a valuable collector's item, because it's more than likely that you will make one or two mistakes and may even destroy the body in the process. On the other hand, if you get scratches beyond repair, this material is quite cheap. You can always cut a new glass. So this is not crucial. If this is bad, you can take a new one. Easily make a new one out of this sheet.
can it be an idea to especially for us new beginners, to make a template from the first one and then cut it out in the second one to avoid too much scratches?
Yeah, that could be a good idea. Yes, right. But the problem with the template system is the fact that now that if you use this and draw an outline here, it will be bigger than this one. And the tolerances are very small here. And even that kind of difference can be significant. So the new glass won't necessarily fit. So, now, as I said, there are now a few scratches in the finish, and some of the scratches are in such places that will be evident when this would be finished. But I won't go into the trouble of doing everything again. So what I will do next is remove any extra material around the underside. There is no need to leave too much material around the window opening. Let's see, 1 millimeter is quite enough. So, and I got this window so that it will fit on the pillars or on the roof section, so I will remove the rest of the material from the bottom. So there will be 2 or 3 millimeters will be removed from here. So okay, here we have a window glass, and the next step is to clean up those window frames. They will start to look somewhat messy during this process, so it's a good idea to sand them smooth and remove any residue from this channel scribing procedure. Of course, it is not advisable to remove so much material that the channels will disappear, making the window opening too large. Okay, and when everything starts to look relatively neat, the next step would be painting this channel area matte black. And why is this? This is because of the fact that this is molded in pale gray. Now, if I paint the body, for example, red, and I leave these areas unpainted, the gray, you will be able to see the gray to another window opening. So everything has to be black. So, and I'm using Hambro matte black for this purpose. It's not ideal for this demonstration purpose because this takes at least 1 day to dry properly. But we can see what I can come up with.
Do you paint the black before the outside or afterwards?
Yes, I don't, if this was a real case, the next step with this one would be to paint the body and let the body dry properly. And after that, removing any overspray from these channel areas and then use this matte black.
Okay.
but I will paint it now matte black, and I don't let the matte black dry thoroughly. Let's see what will happen. My experience is that this traditional Hambro matte black works here extremely well, much better than more modern paints like Tamiya matte black. That is my experience. Somebody might not agree with me, but that's my experience. So I don't know what will be so here. And this is not very critical, of course. You can paint it quite messy, because unless you get paint on the middle of the roof section on the outside. Okay, I try to paint as thinly as possible to speed up the drying process. And as I said, it won't dry thoroughly as it should in a few minutes, but we'll see what we can do. Because there are a few tricks, even after this painting the frame, general area matte black. So, okay, and here. So, okay, so when we are waiting for that matte black to dry to the touch, I can wax the windshield. I won't remove the scratches. It would take much more time. There are some scratches there, and ideally those scratches should be removed as well. But as I said, it would take quite a lot of time. It would even require a complete polishing kit with abrasive pads. So it wouldn't be very good considering this entire process. So.
Very nice colors, actually.
Yeah, this is flannel cloth, and I use flannel for waxing windshields and polishing the paint job. This works very well for polishing regular paint job, not only for windshields.
Could I send this, the last one?
Yes, yes. And while waxing a straight glass see-through window, one should be very careful not to bend it while waxing it. I have destroyed several glass parts by bending it while waxing it. Also, the area under the glass part should be completely free of any bumps. If there are some bumps and you use some pressure to wax, so the bumps will be visible in the thin clear sheet. And especially so if you are using tinted glass like this. Any bumps underneath this tinted glass come very visible while waxing it.
Can you wax it before you tint it?
No, because if you first wax it, then you try to tint it, guess what will happen? The tinting won't stick to the glass. Tinting won't stick to the glass material if it has been waxed before tinting. So you have to first tint it, then you have to cut it to the correct configuration, and then you have to wax it, and then you have to glue it in place. Has anybody any idea how long I have been using your precious time?
We're enjoying it, so it's not problem.
Okay, now I have a more or less back twin seal, and I guess that I might try to glue that twin seal to the opening, twin seal opening, which I painted matte black. It isn't completely dry, I know, but we cannot wait 24 hours for it to dry completely, so I tried to do it right away. And okay. So I'm not sure if this will work, but we'll see. The problem with fogging usually occurs when you use too much superglue. The idea here is to use as little as possible. Only few very small drops here and there. The surface tension between the glass and the channel will suck the superglue in larger areas, and the glass will get glued very firmly. So let's see. And in this process you need two hands. One hand to press the window very firmly, tightly to the windshield opening, and you have to check it from the inside and the outside that the fit is as perfect as possible. So, and this window glass now, surprise, it stays put. Maybe that matte black paint acts as a glue, but we cannot be sure that it would stay there for ages. So I'm putting a very small amount of super glue on top of this toothpick box. Then I take a small drop in the tip of my X-Acto knife blade, and then I start to feed this super glue into the joint between the channel and the window glass. And as I said, I use only minimal amounts of this stuff. This might not work very well now because the matte black may not be completely dry, and it is possible that this glue will stick to the still wet matte black, making the joint less permanent than it would be if the matte black had been completely dry. However, when this matte black is completely dry, it won't usually lift. Actually, the glue goes to the matte black, not to the plastic itself, and the matte black won't usually lift. So that's one reason why I use this humble stuff, and they don't pay anything for me for that. Yeah, I guess I would be the advertiser.
Should make a couple of phone calls to Humbrol and KNS and a couple of...
Yeah, maybe I should make a phone call to China where the Hamburg stuff is nowadays produced. But anyway, so I put small amounts of super glue around the perimeter of the window glass, feed it to the joint between the body, windshield opening or channel I described in, and the window glass. All around, but not big amounts of glue, very small amounts. And while doing so, I simultaneously press with my finger so that I press the glass with my finger so the fit will be as tight as possible. Super glue dries almost instantly, so you don't have to keep your fingers there hours. A few minutes will usually be enough for this. And this is quite simple case actually. There's a curvature in this windshield, but it's not severe. But if you look at that 64 orange one, both the windshield and the rear glass has been done by using this method, and there's quite heavy curvature. And the contact area cannot be very large because those pillars are so thin. And it works.
But that is not vacuum formed, that is from machine.
The 64 custom, that is not vacuum formed.
No.
Only that Naus windshield, that is vacuum formed. But even that is glued with super glue.
But when you glue that window, do you fasten the window before you put on bare metal foil?
Yeah, I don't use. I usually glue the window first and then put on the bare metal foil. Bare metal foil goes after the window. That's my method. I have partially demonstrated the fact here. I don't know if anybody noticed it, but I have a bare metal foil only partially to windshield frame. So that I intentionally have left some of the matte black visible between the chrome trim and the window glass. Because in the one-to-one scale reality there's a rubber sealing in that area. But I don't know if that is really necessary. But if you first paint it matte black, then glue the window, you can afterwards add the bare metal foil and add as much or leave as much as you like the matte black visible to make an illusion of a rubber sealing. So you have to, or at least the way I do it, is add small amounts, as I said, super glue in several places and not much in any place. So there will most likely be only a minimum amount of fogging due to this procedure. If you put flow in the super glue like this, you would get a white windshield. So, and now I think that I have glued in the window, if not completely successfully, at least acceptably. So,
To our standards.
okay, and what follows next? I have here microscale, crystal clear. This stuff is good, but it won't hold that kind of windshield in place. So the next thing I will do is seal the whole thing with this one. I put a small layer around the windshield opening here, in the area where the new glass meets the body or the channel. And this, the idea of this is that the surface tension will suck this white stuff around the perimeter, so you won't be able to see through anywhere if there would be any areas where there would be enough material. And as I said, this stuff is not strong enough to hold this windshield in place, so you have to use super glue. I also have here epoxy glue. You could try epoxy glue for gluing instead of super glue, but epoxy glue sets quite slowly. You would have to press the windshield in the correct configuration 20 minutes or something like that. And at least my fingers won't do that. So I will add this white glue, and next thing I will do is put this in circulation so you can see what I have done. Everything has not been done yet though. Because now you can see that even though I put minimal amounts of super glue, there is some fogging. And my next task is to try to remove that fogging, or at least make it unnoticeable. So I don't know how clearly you can see what I'm doing. This is very difficult to do like this because I wouldn't be able to see where I will feed the glue to. Also, this sealing serves the purpose that when you are painting these inside window moldings, when you are painting in the inner roof panel area, you have to paint inside window moldings. If you have open slots here and there, these will suck the paint. So if you paint the inside of the roof section red and the outside is white, the red paint might find its way on the outside or on this joint between the window glass and pillars, and it would be very unrealistic looking. But sealing this area with white glue will at least reduce that kind of possibility. I'm using sharp cardboard pieces for applying this white glue. I cut some pieces out of thin cardboard and use this.
Do you prefer that instead of toothpicks?
Yeah, because this paper cardboard material will suck the moisture out of the glue, and you can get more glue and in a more precise manner this way, in my opinion. And you don't have to be very careful on the underside, which won't be visible after the model has been completed. So, okay, and now, there are some scratches, as I said, and I didn't try to remove them. Because it would have taken too much time. They would have been removable, though. But now now I can put this body into circulation, and you can check how it looks like. The joint between the plastic body and the homemade window glass. And I can say that it doesn't look very neat. It looks somewhat messy, doesn't it?
You want me to answer that? No?
Because the next thing that I would do is get rid of those uneven areas in those joint lines by painting a matte black frame around the perimeter of the window glass on the inside of the window glass, on the inside of the body. I haven't done it here yet, but a thin black line will be painted around the window opening, so that when you look the window opening from the outside, all the lines will appear straight, not rippled or uneven or wavy. But as I said, the model is there, I can do it right away. While waiting for that, I could say that masking is obviously needed for that purpose. And what I use for masking in that instance is bare metal foil, regular chrome bare metal foil. I cut thin strips of bare metal foil. I don't know if you see it, but I have been using this for similar purposes before. I cut thin strips of bare metal foil with a blade that doesn't contain superglue. You have to be very careful that you don't contaminate your tools. Trying to cut bare metal foil with a blade containing super glue and then attaching this bare metal foil to the windshield area. I mean bare metal foil with some super glue on it. It would be a disaster. And I should have a ruler around here somewhere. Sorry?
Circulate a little bit faster.
So I guess that I can show this process on that bolt one, but I will do it properly on that Impala body later on. Okay. And as I said, no black outline has been painted inside of this windshield or side windows or rear window. And goes like this, that you take a strip of bare metal foil and then you try to find the surface that is better. And then you attach this bare metal foil strip on the inside of this glass, so that there will be very small visible strip between the pillar, windshield pillar, and the bare metal foil. So, and of course this has to be burnished down with a Q-tip. So, I don't know if does this so. I mean, if I put I don't think if anybody can see, but if I put this one in circulation too. So I attach bare metal foil. There's a bare metal foil attached to the windshield, so that there's a thin strip between the bare metal foil and the windshield pillar. And that area will be painted matte black from the inside. And if there are any ripples or uneven areas caused by paint or ripples when induced by the scribing, those will disappear beneath under the matte black paint. And when you do it on every side of the windshield, so you will get uniform black border. And I'm a car modeler, not a military modeler, but using matte black for this purpose is in reality not the best possibility. I have here matte black with me because it's easier, but I usually use a dark gray, because if you use matte black, it will make the contrast will be too evident. Some modern cars have matte black or black outline on their windshield and side glass. And although it is matte black, in reality I wouldn't suggest using matte black for a model car. I would suggest using dark grey. So, but as I said, this has not yet been painted, and I won't paint it here because my intention is to paint the SKALA windshield area. So,
You get that. This time is, I think it's
sorry.
about 10 minutes. You have used 1 hour and 20 minutes.
Okay, yes.
10 minutes left.
Good. Okay. So if we do so that I will put some bare metal foil strips inside the window opening, paint it matte black, and we'll continue tomorrow from this on. And this is not the only thing that you can do. I mean, the next thing I mentioned about is tinting. It's one thing which is quite important with window glass. Maybe I can do that tomorrow. The matte black should dry by tomorrow, so this would be finished in that respect. So, and there are some other aspects as well, but I won't go into detail to talk in detail right away now. So maybe tomorrow. So I will put the bare metal foil in place and paint this and let it dry. Sorry, I almost made a mistake. No, I won't do it that way. What I should do next is remove the fogging. There is some fogging. Did you notice it? Okay, the next thing to do is to remove the slight fogging that occurred. It is not much, and I guess it would have been left unremoved, but
Not for you.
I will remove it. And the windshield was waxed before it was glued in, and because of that fact, and because of the fact that I used only a minimal amount of the super glue, the fogging can really be removed like this. Yes, and now I would say that fogging is gone, and what there is that fogging left will be left under the matte black paint. Okay, maybe I won't be very careful here. We have to keep with our timetables. Of course, some people are very handy with their X-Acto blades. They might try to put a large piece of bare metal foil and then cut it in the correct configuration. I mean, against this clear window. I wouldn't do it. My hands shake so much that I would destroy the entire window glass. So I use these strips. When you use thin strips, you can bend this. Bare metal foil bends quite nicely. For example, this one has heavily curved A-pillars when you look them from the front. So even though I cut straight strips of bare metal foil, I can curve them in the correct configuration. Yes, this has taken quite much time. Maybe you can now understand why I don't finish so many models each year. This is something else than building something straight out of the box. But every modeler has to decide what is the most important aspect of modeling. Is it to get as many finished models as possible, or is it the finish or creating illusions about the real thing? Which one is the most important thing? And how much you are willing to put time to achieve the end results? So now this has been bare metal foil, so there's a bare metal foil on the windshield and there's a thin strip between the bare metal foil and the windshield frame, and that will be painted matte black. And beneath the matte black, all those ripples and fogging and so on, they will disappear. And as I said, matte black may not be the best possibility here. Maybe dark gray look more realistic, create less contrast. But it was only so many bottles of paint I could take to the aircraft. So, and the next thing is to let the paint dry and then remove those bare metal foil strips. So maybe we can do that tomorrow.
Will you leave the strips on for that long?
Actually, I guess that when the matte black starts to get matte, you can remove the strips already. They don't have to stay there as long as the matte black is completely dry. As long as it won't start to flow in those areas where they mask. As a matter of fact, I guess I could try to remove one already, right away. Or maybe not. Okay, but I guess that's about it for today. We could continue from here on tomorrow, or on the other hand, if you have any questions, anything pertaining to my models, I could answer them tomorrow. For example, what color I use for this one, and why is that down so funny looking in comparison to that body.
Maybe we could exhibit these models together with the finished model outside of the table afterwards, so people can get a closer look on this one too.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah, so that's it then. Thank you.
was the time frame tomorrow available now? Was 11 tomorrow? Time frame tomorrow is 11 o'clock? Was it 11:30 now?
I don't remember.
It's okay. That's here.
But of course I can answer any questions right away. The reason why, okay, this is basically the same car. I mean, in 1-to-1 scale reality, the windows are same here. And this has
This does. You see those track marks down there? That's rain wash. So it looks like you've got dirt flowing down the side of it. Can you turn it? You see that? So it's not really defining any of the detail. It's just adding the first layer of kind of colour and dirt onto it.
You consider this as washes or filters now?
It's really just it's a filter rather than a wash. So you're not really defining any detail. All you're doing is just adding like that. You've got that kind of streaked kind of rain wash. It just breaks the surface up a little bit. And when it dries, it's almost invisible, but at least it's the first layer.
So normally, how many layers do you do?
On a model like this?
Depends.
You could probably do up to about 10 passes with different things in different colours.
Colors or shades?
Both, yeah. Some shades of the basic colour. Once you start adding in, you think you're adding paint chips as a layer, this is a layer, washes of defined detail, that's a layer, that's 3. You could add lighter passes in there, that's 4. They all build up, so by the time you finish, you could be up to sort of 10.
Den kan jo bare variere også. Ja, det har jeg gjort her. Ja. Har du brukt tilbake for bare svart? Ja. Nei, jeg faktisk ikke. Jeg var sånn. Jeg får ikke se det der. Ja. Ja, da blir det ikke så eller så bruker du ikke lov.
It's hard working without a hairdryer, isn't it? A hairdryer. No, it's awful. Normally you just let that, just dry that off, use a hairdryer and it'll just dry it off really quickly and then you can move on to the next step. So basically you can see how, we were talking earlier on about the lighter shades, you can see how much darker that is already than the colour that we had before.
Ja, ja. Det er vel det. Det er sånn.
So what you're doing now is you're concentrating.
Just adding streaks down the side.
But you concentrate because you've done the mottling on just one side, right?
Yeah. So painted it so you've got lots of different kind of areas of idea. That's just adding streaks. If you think about it, anything that lands on the top of it is just going to naturally fall down the side. You can see.
It's a flat brush, right?
It's just an old flat brush. So it's more of this wrong. Yes, this is Windsor Newton's raw.
But would you leave it standing up the correct way, or would you tilt it over to the side?
You mean so that this doesn't flow down the side of it?
Yeah.
This is so thick, it probably wouldn't do that anyway. Yeah, so you should be okay. Okay, so we've got... Blow. Blow.
Suck.
Okay. So we get a soft brush. Okay, and then what we do, go into here. And blend this in.
Do you blend it, or is it the same like you take off the excess?
You're blending it in. So you're not really removing it, you just sort of... You're smoothing the transition out between the colour and the surrounding areas.
Sorry, the whole lot.
We can do here, on this side, so we get the brush. And then, can you see how that's taking some of the colour from those bolts? See that? It's taking some of the dirt off the bolts and taking it down the side of the hole.
It's very subtle.
There you go. You're my assistant for the next half an hour. So basically just work the colour in, just use some of the thinners, gently blend it in.
Are you...
Use that.
Yeah.
So move in be quick with it so it doesn't.
And then make streaks.
Yeah, so blend these. If you do this, so if you get the brush and then take it to the panel line like that, okay, and blend it in and then blend it down. It's a cool technique, isn't it? Subtle. That's it. And do it in one movement so that it goes all the way down. And then you'll find as you take the paint off, by the time you get to the bottom of that whole panel, there'll be no paint left. So you've got a gentle graduation of the colour. Is it working? Try taking the brush over like that, so you're taking some of the paint over. Is there some paint on that side now?
Not much. It's starting to dry up a little bit.
See how it streaks there?
And then from this side.
And then on the top, what you need to do is you want to be blending it in, so you get the paint, a little stippling. See how that blends in? Soft, just gentle stipples, then you'll blend it. You see how it's blending in?
Yeah.
That's it. And put some more thinners on and you'll see how it all blends away. But the paint is still around the detail and it's now soft. Like so, with this.
It's fairly easy to see the when you do the blending. So when you have the a light model.
Yeah. With a dark model, the best way to do this would be to use a light colour for the wash. So you've got a dusty colour. So, see how that? So you blend it like that. And you can see how the detail is now starting to stand out.
So what you're saying is basically when you have like a light subcolor below it, you
use a lighter colour for the wash.
Exactly. Oh, I mean the opposite.
Yeah.
So if you have a light model base,
dark colours
for the washes and the opposite for the.
So you would have, if you were doing a Panzer Grey vehicle, to get the details to stand out, it's cool to put in lighter colours around the bolts because it looks like you've got dust that's settled around those areas. Okay, you pleased with the way it's looking?
Yeah.
So where you've got, you can see on here where you've got like a distinct line between the colours. You go back in there.
If you leave that line there without smoothing it out, it'll permanently stay there until
it'll look like a watermark.
Exactly.
Yeah. You can see actually where it's done that. See that there? Yeah. So if you get that effect on there, it looks pretty unsightly, but the easiest way to do it is just go into it with a brush and just blend it out. Okay, and then. And you can,
same with enamel wash?
Yeah, same if you're using enamels or if you're using acrylics.
Acrylics go much more faster.
They do, yeah. Oh no, don't use acrylics for the washes. Just use use enamels.
What about those ink washes, like from games?
I wouldn't use those on model lines at all. Definitely not. I mean, you can use those ink washes on something like that if you're doing a metallic surface and you want to use the inks on metal. If you're using bolt gun or mithril silver, any of those kind of colours, but certainly not. So you can see now where you've got, if you look at the top here, If you look at how this is compared to how this is, you can see where the detail has been pulled out just by adding some really subtle little washes inside there, and how much more weathered that looks compared to this. So, we have a kind of an interesting surface now. You can see there's all sorts of rain wash and everything on there. So what we can do So we've got a hull plate, kind of weathered, looking a bit scruffy and used.
Totally random.
Yep, don't even think about it. So just little dots. I would use white as well, but I haven't brought any white oils with me. But yeah, little random dots.
Turn it around.
Get our thinners.
Jeg må ned i søppelkassa liksom.
Den som jeg har. Helt klart.
And what this does is it adds hundreds of little colours, little shades into there that helps break up that surface. And you can see on the front it's quite a plain surface, and now on here we've got lots of little colours in there. We'll see what it looks like on a...
So you left the front plates very light just to get the...
just get a bit of contrast.
Exactly, the contrast of the shade, right?
But you can see by using these colours...
You should use a brush with stiff
Is that a soft brush?
Just
or
a soft, yeah. And can you see how that's warmed that front plate up? And you can see how it's warmed that side as well. Splendid.
Laget bie-blåbål. Står det?
Ja, det er på den siden her. Liten, ganske liten.
See, it's starting to look really weathered now.
You can see the grime.
You can see all the. The idea is to make it look like you've had dirt on the surface that's run down from top to bottom. And once we've done that, we've got some specific areas here we want to have, make look dirty and have them. Say you've got a rusty bolt or something like that, or a rusty little corner. So we've got a few little spots of oil paint on there. Bit of thinners. You see?
Turn it around.
Okay.
So what you do when you do the rust, that's when reference photographs and photos and something like that comes into mind when you
do something like this.
Sometimes, right?
It tends to be what I think is going to look good, and if it doesn't look good, and if I paint something onto it, and I think no, that looks a bit forced, then I'll just take it off. And that's the great thing about oil paints, that you don't have to. They're not permanent when you've worked with them until they're dry. But you can also, if you wanted to, for instance, if on the side here, let's say there's a scratch.
Du fikk deg ikke USA, altså? Ja, tok deg USA. Men jeg kjøpte den sist for 3 påser. Men det heldigvis en påse ganske drøy, da. Ja, meget vanlig.
Okay. So you can say there's little scratches on there, just blended in. And then, if you want to,
det vel det som fordelen med det, forestiller meg som blir en, for han tørker flatet samtidig. Har du gjort sånn som du har skrevet? Ja, han blander jeg i. Og det nok for at han tørker fortere gjøre.
Let's go back.
Har du brukt det der også? Ja. Det skulptmål i den også? Ja, det rent skulptmål, den veien. Det det, ja? Ja. Og så drøsser han oppå? Drøsser han oppå, ja. Som nesten opp. Som viser av bestandverten utfører til å finne rette farve på den type bakke, liksom. Sånn at 2 ballejofarmer blader i sammen, og da får det sånn.
It gives you an idea of how to create these kind of oily scratches, but this you wanted to create. Say you've got a rusty patch on here. Use some of this burnt sienna.
Dette blir jo skjult, sånn at det blir skjult for å ha noe lenger.
Stappa inn i gras der, da. Det er morsomt å lage ting du kjenner igjen. Det har mye referanser på
Blended in.
How often would you see like a tank with scratches that goes all the way into the bare metal? Would that be like normal?
Depends how long the tank's been in service.
Exactly.
And it depends. This was something that we were talking about the other day. It depends what you're after, really.
Yeah, because normally they do like infield
repairs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where artistic license definitely kicks in.
Exactly.
Yeah. What I'm trying to do here is create very, very fine traces of colour. Okay? Not go onto it and say, right, well, if I use an oil colour, I can, like I say, I can remove sections if I want to, but not going in and saying, right, well, we're going to put a paint chip there, that's a paint chip, because it's just huge and it's ridiculous. One of the things when you're painting these things is to make them look as subtle as possible, so tiny traces. Okay. Like that. Okay, and you can overlay one colour onto another. So you can see the difference there. You see that? Yeah. So, but this is the great thing. We've put our huge paint chip on there, done it in oils. So what we do is just go. Gone. And just don't be afraid to correct something. And then once we've got it down, we go back again. Blend it in. Use your finger to blend it in. Still some paint on there, so we can go into here. How's that looking? Looking okay? Looking okay?
Yeah.
Right, well I've put some patches of paint on there. There we go. Remember to regulate how much paint, how much thinner you put on the brush, okay? And go into it. If you think you've put too much on, go into it and then just drag it down in one movement. Is that looking okay? We base coated this model and got some paintwork done on it, and then Roman had a go at weathering using some of the ideas that we tried out yesterday, and I think that worked out pretty well. You learned some stuff, didn't you, that you didn't know before? Had some ideas that you thought were okay, some stuff that you perhaps won't use again, other things that you may use again. Okay, so that's what we'll do this morning. So it's kind of, I feel a bit like, you know, one of those comedians that comes to the end of his set and says, anybody got any questions? And you don't really know what you're going to get asked, you know. So was anybody in here watching my demonstration yesterday? Yeah? Plenty of you watching the demonstration. Did you find it useful? Did you find any of the ideas that were in there useful? So, having thought about what I did, and I don't know if any of you actually came and sat outside and watched some of the other stuff, does anybody have any questions they'd like to start off with? It doesn't necessarily have to be about my demonstration. It could be a general question about, you know, what sort of paints we use, those kind of things. So we may get started with something like that. Nobody?
Well, what's this question about turpentine?
The turpentine question.
Because I had exactly that accident you were talking about yesterday with my model.
Yeah.
I did lost the model with Johnson, but the turpentine still dissolved the Johnson.
Yeah.
When I did the wash, so I had some pretty bad streaking.
Right.
Stripes.
Okay.
So I suppose any turpentine is not.
No.
It's not turpentines.
No. That was perhaps something that could have been made a little clearer during the demo, really. That you often read in magazines where it says I thinned oil paints with white spirit, or I used turpentine, or I used, something I bought in a litre bottle from the local DIY. Those chemicals are too hot for what we use and really shouldn't be used at all on a model. And it doesn't matter whether you put a barrier coat underneath it, you're still going to have those kind of reactions. When it comes to adding washes onto a model, really you've got to think carefully about what you use and whether or not the chemical that you use to thin the paint is going to react with the paint underneath. And I had exactly the same problem as you described yesterday on a model that I built last year, and it tore its way through the paint layer into the plastic. And I was finding that was happening more and more. So what I did is I switched over to using, for oil paints and washes that involve enamels, using Humboldt thinners, or using mid-productions, odorless turpentine, that kind of thing. Because if you, it's the same with distilled turpentine that you get from our shops. You buy it in glass bottles, the Windsor and New distilled turpentine, the one with a really pungent smell. That's brilliant for washes, but you have to be very careful with that as well, because that can react with the plastic underneath. They're quite hot chemicals. So it's worth, if you're going to use those kind of chemicals for thinning paint down, I would recommend that you stick to the manufacturer's products. Use odorless turpentine, things that are slightly less aggressive. And you'll find that you should be okay. But Johnson's Clear is a barrier. That tends to be a barrier to everything around it. So you shouldn't have too many problems with that. The question that kind of follows on from that is also about paint being laid one on top of another. There's a myth that you can't put enamels over the top of acrylics, or you can't put acrylics over the top of enamels, and that's just rubbish. You can put any of those things with impunity over the top of the other ones, because they don't react with each other. They're both inert to each other. And obviously you can't put enamel washes over the top of an enamel coat until it's perfectly dry, but you can put enamel washes over an acrylic coat without actually reacting. Without reacting underneath. That's what we tried to do on this yesterday. Was I showed you yesterday how quickly we built a base of paint, and then we were weathering this within 2 hours, and there was no reaction with the paint underneath. I think it's probably hard now, so you should be all right. There shouldn't be too many problems with that.
Are you thinking about that? I used to get away with that earlier, but years ago I usually used polyurethane floor lacquer as a barrier. And when that is hard, you can put almost anything.
Yes, absolutely.
But of course you can't work as fast because that needs some time to cure.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you find that when you're using dissimilar materials, dissimilar products, whether it's enamels or lacquers or acrylics or any of those paints, and putting one on top of another, you very quickly find out which one you can't put on top of something else. Years ago, when car paints were cellulose based rather than acrylic based, it was very difficult to spray one on top of something like an enamel, because you'd get that crazed effect, which would work brilliantly if you wanted to use it for something like a weathering effect underneath. If you wanted to have all the paint bubbles underneath, that would work really well. But you can't really do that now. And I'm also finding that some of the Gonsanyo makes an aerosol crystal clear coats. They make matte and a gloss and a satin one, and I found that they react with certain types of paint as well. And in actual fact, I used one of those to spray a wooden base that I was using building for a diorama, and I sprayed it over the top of this wooden base, thinking it would be okay. And whatever had been used to paint the underlying varnish coat just ballisted within seconds of me spraying it on. So you really do need to be careful with that. But rule of thumb, when it comes to things like solvents, white spirits, any of those kind of things, I would avoid them like the plague. Although it seems cheaper, you can go out and get 2 litres of white spirit from a local DIY shop and it'll cost you only a few pounds. You're going to end up running into a whole heap of trouble with those, so best to avoid those.
Should we use the mic?
Should we use
the microphone?
I don't know, can everybody hear me? Yeah? Everybody hear me? Yeah? Can you hear me at the back? Yeah, even he can hear me at the back. Yeah, so, next. Come on, you must all have questions that you think, how does that work then? How does it do that? Nobody? Okay, well why don't I open it up then? Who thinks kits are too expensive? Yeah? Who thinks kits are too expensive? You think kits are too expensive? Yeah? Everybody think kits are too expensive?
It depends.
It depends.
If you buy in China online, then it can be not expensive.
Who thinks kits are too expensive in Norway?
Yeah.
Who thinks kits are too expensive in Europe, on a whole? Okay. So where do you think that's going to go? Where do you think kit prices will go?
Well, I only buy it here in Norway, so I don't buy on eBay.
Do you think that the future will sustain that? Do you think we'll be in 5 years' time? Do you think with the way that kits prices are going up?
No, maybe it's hard to recruit younger people or others due to the high prices.
Yeah. Does anyone else think that? You're a young guy there.
I didn't hear what they said.
Can you afford the new kits?
I do.
Yeah? But you find that's a big piece of your disposable income?
Yes, it is sometimes.
Yeah. So we were discussing that yesterday, and I've got I think I was talking to you about it. In actual fact, it was last night. And kit prices are hugely expensive at the moment. Dragon have just released a new Opel Blitz truck. You may have seen this. And back at home, that truck will retail for £80. That's 800 krona. Is that right? My maths. 800 krona. That's a hugely expensive new kit. No photo etch in it, other than a little badge on the front. It's a plastic kit, straight down the line plastic kit. However, I'm going to throw a little argument into the mix about all of this. The model makers think that kit prices, that the kit is the standalone product. So you go out and you spend 800 krona on a plastic model kit, and that's it. That's what you've got. You've got a plastic model kit. And we discussed at some length last night that in actual fact, what you're buying then is you're buying the time that you're going to need to build that plastic model kit. The 40 hours or something that kit is going to take to assemble and to paint. And then once you've finished with that assembly and painting time, then you have something that you can display. So it becomes a 3-part process. Plastic model kit then gives you the time that you need. Now I support a football team. I watch football week in, week out. Only a small football club. But if I watched a Premiership team back at home, that would cost me to go and watch my team play for 2 hours, £75. £75, that would include my tickets, that would include my petrol to get there, some food, a programme, £75, and those 2 hours would have gone. When you start looking at it like that and kind of rationalising how much these kits cost, it starts to make a little bit more sense, I think, that they're there to give you some enjoyment and some entertainment. I've tried to argue at this point with a few people over the years at model clubs and that kind of thing, and been shot down in flames. And people said, "Well, you're talking rubbish. That's nonsense. How can that be the case? How can a small box of plastic parts be worth £80?" But when you start looking at it like that, it starts to change your opinion, I think.
Considering the age group that make up the bulk of model builders today, the prices are alright because we are older and we have a fixed income and there are no problems for us. But someone mentioned for recruitment, I'm not sure.
I think in those terms, that's where the other companies, Airfix and those kind of companies are producing cheaper kits. Revell are a good example of that. Revell is still producing very cheap kits. Very good kits, very cheaply. That's perhaps where their recruitment is going to go. But I'm also, on top of the pricing policy, it was perhaps something that if I was to come back and do this again, may well be worth sort of discussing in sort of length the complexity of the kits that are coming through at the moment. One of the topics that you see when you're reading on forums is new Dragon kits, those kind of things, where you've got 800 to 1,000 plastic pieces to assemble before you get to the painting stage, and it's making modelers less productive. When I was building models, when I was 14, 15 years of age, you know, we were building Tamiya kits like 150 parts, and we were thinking that's great, 150 parts, you know, but you could build that in a couple of days, put it together, and then you're onto the painting stage. Now, for the average model maker, I guess you guys fall into that demographic. You're going to be spending 3 or 4 weeks putting the thing together before you ever get to the painting stage, and that makes me wonder whether or not where the future of that can lie. Everybody wants a sophisticated model. Everybody wants something that's perfectly detailed and has got every clamp and, you know, or every open panel on an aircraft or whatever. It wants all of those kind of things. But the payback to that is that you complete those. Collections are smaller these days. Model cases are less full, because if you want to even build one of those straight and put everything together, you're going to have to spend a huge amount of time putting those models together. And that makes me wonder where the future's going to lie, and whether or not we're not going to go back sort of full circle. Dragon released a range of kits a couple of years ago. They called them smart kits, and their tagline was that they were going to be easier to build than the standard range of 35th scale model kits that they were putting together, and that they were going to be much easier to do. You weren't going to have all the photo etched brass. They were going to break down all of the suspension assemblies, so that instead of having 20 parts to an assembly, you only have 5 parts. And what's happened over the last 2 years is their smart kits are now as complicated as the other kits that they produce in their range. They're no easier to build. They've got as many parts. They take as long to put together, and they take as long to paint. So what they've done is they've created a marketing idea, and they've completely gone against what they wanted to do in the first place. And now we're back to square one. They may as well put those kits in the same standard boxes that Dragon put for their other armour kits. So we're now, smart kits have now got 800 parts. Now, I'm a professional model maker that builds models 24 hours a day almost. And I sometimes pick up one of those Dragon kits, open the lid, and look at it and go, put the lid back down, and I move on. And I think, right, where can I get a similar kit? You know, it's going to give me the same ideas, but it's going to take me 4 weeks to put together. You know,
You don't think that these very complete kits, to call them that, Dragon's coming or releasing, that they sort of give up creativity?
Destroy creativity?
Yeah, in the sense that from being a model builder, you become just an assembler.
A kit assembler. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Coming through, you know, for everybody that's been building models, you know, from the, sort of through the 70s, through the 80s and 90s and up to now, for those people who've stuck with that, it's one of the things that we learned to do. We learned to be able to put detail into models, scratch building and all of that kind of thing. You know, I still manage to scratch build occasionally, you know, if I'm building a diorama, or scratch build structures and those kind of things, the details. But I think if you were to come into the hobby now, I think you wouldn't have that background. You wouldn't be able to do those kind of things. And I found over the years, you see it a lot on forums online. You'll see modelers who will come on, and the first question I have to say is, Dragon are releasing a brand new Messerschmitt 109. What sort of aftermarket parts are we going to get for this? That's their first question. Do you think, is there any aftermarket for this brand new kit that's been out for 3 minutes? What aftermarket products are there for it? And it drives me mental, because I think, well, why can't you actually just put the detail in yourself? Why couldn't you build some of those things yourself? it almost sounds like if you were an alien and you dropped onto the planet and you read one of those forums, you were a model-making alien from Saturn and you thought, what do those Earthlings do when they're building their kits? You'd look at it and think, God, these guys can't do anything. You know, and I think that misses something because the creativity is lost with model makers who do that, who only assemble kits. And I think there is now a subsection where we have become assemblers and painters of plastic parts. That's what we do.
I think it depends on the amount of research you want to put in the model.
Yeah.
Because when you start to dig what is really accurate in the kit or aftermarket product, you just throw away half of the photo edge kit and just try to do something with steering sheets and that kind of stuff.
Well, I think if you looked at an aftermarket, I'm guilty of this. This morning I bought a cockpit set for an F4 Phantom, so I'm being kind of a hypocrite about it really, because I'm thinking, well, that's quicker than me doing it myself. So I am being a bit of a hypocrite, but when I look at those, I'm sure if I look at those parts, somebody scratch built that, you know, and the scratch building involved in detailing the inside of the cockpit wall is not that tricky. Little boxes, a bit of wiring, some strip here and there, all that kind of thing. And the payoff for that is that you create something that's unique to you. And you have this idea that when you build plastic model kits, you put them on a table and everything. If we all built them exactly as they came in the kit, and let's say none of us weathered them, let's take weathering out of the equation completely. Okay, so all we did is that we would say this room built exactly the same aeroplane kit or exactly the same armour kit. You weren't allowed to weather it, you just painted it, we painted it all in the same colours. Those models would look identical to each other, give or take. Standards would be different, there would be a variance in sort of standards. Let's say we're all the same ability. And to me, that kind of misses out a huge chunk of what makes this hobby great. What makes this hobby great is that we can all be creative, we can all produce something that is individual to us. When you finish the model, you put it on the table, people can look at it, and although it's superficially the same as the kit next to it, it's still yours. You put it together, you paint it, you put it together, you paint it, everything looks, you know, and you've created something that's individual. This model isn't going to be the same as anybody else's kit, you know, because, well, like 4 people had to go painting it, so it's a mishmash of different styles and sort of parts and everything. But that's what it's creative. And when I came through the ranks in the 80s and I was buying books and magazines and how-to guides and everything by model makers I respected, a lot of these guys were detailing them up. Shelley Payne uses a phrase he calls gizmology. And gizmology is a great, all-encompassing phrase that basically means chucking in parts that don't belong there to make it look like they should. And he detailed the interior of aircraft with railroad parts and bits and pieces from armoured models and all that sort of stuff, because when you looked inside that, the viewer wouldn't say, well, that doesn't look like the right piece. They'll just say, cool, that's cool, all those details in there. And that creativity, I think, has been lost over the years, because as more companies have risen up and offered those parts, you know, they've created identikit models across the board, and I think that's a shame that we've lost some of that.
But you say, you're saying that as a Dragon is building kits, let's say 80 pounds.
Yeah.
But then you're also saying that the aftermarket is a big market.
Yeah.
I mean, as a Dragon would of course want to have that part of the aftermarket instead, if they make more and more complicated kits, they include more and more of the aftermarket in the set.
Yes, absolutely.
And they get more paid for it. I mean, if that's what people want.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a counter argument for Dragon, of course, that if you bought one of the high-end Dragon kits, one of the new Panthers or a Tiger or whatever, you open the box in there and it's got a full set of photo etch details, it's got a metal gun barrel, individual track links, all of those kind of things, and that would probably cost you, you know, £60 or something. I remember in 1986-87 when Gun Sanyo released their 35th scale armour kits, there was a small range of them. They did a Panther, Panzer III, Stug, Now those kits were multimedia kits. They had plastic parts, they had model cast and track links, they had photo etched sheet tails and metal gun barrels. They were true multimedia kits. And those kits were released into the UK in 1987. Those kits retailed for £75 in 1987. And now if you